The first time my wife called me a wounded puppy to her lover, I was standing in our kitchen making her favorite coffee, French press, 2 sugars, splash of cream, like a good little errand boy. I wasn't supposed to hear it. Alicia thought I was in the garage, probably because that's where she'd trained me to disappear whenever she needed privacy for her work calls. But our 20-year-old house has thin walls, and her voice carries when she's excited. He'll whimper like a wounded puppy when I serve him the papers, she was saying, that familiar laugh bubbling up from her throat. The same laugh that used to make my chest tight with love. Now it just made my stomach turn. Greg's always been my little errand boy. He'll sign whatever I put in front of him. I stood there holding her coffee mug, the one that said "World's Best Wife," that I'd bought her last Christmas, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not heartbreak. That had happened months ago when I'd first started noticing the signs. This was something else, something sharper. My name is Greg Taylor. I'm 38 years old, district manager for a chain of family restaurants across the upper Midwest. I used to box in college, which means I know how to take a hit and keep standing. What I apparently never learned was how to see a sucker punch coming from my own wife. Alicia Taylor, née Rodriguez, is 35 and works as an HR director for a mid-sized manufacturing company. She's beautiful in that sharp corporate way that photographs well at company parties. All angles and perfectly applied makeup, like she's always ready for her close-up. We've been married for 12 years, and for the last 2, I've been watching her slowly edit me out of her life. The coffee was getting cold in my hands when I heard her continue. Dom thinks I should ask for alimony, but honestly, I just want him gone. The house, the car, whatever. I'm tired of pretending to be grateful for his little gestures. Did you know he still brings me coffee in bed? Like that makes up for being boring. Dom. Dominic Reyes, her work husband. Factory foreman, gym rat, married to Susie, who happens to be Alicia's best friend since middle school. I'd been watching Dom's hands linger on my wife's lower back at parties for months, telling myself I was being paranoid. Turns out paranoia is just pattern recognition with a bad reputation. I set the coffee mug down on the counter with more force than necessary. The sound echoed through the kitchen, and Alicia's voice immediately dropped to a whisper. "Too late, sweetheart." The cat was already out of the bag, along with my last shred of respect for our marriage. "I have to go," she said quickly. "Greg's making noise in the kitchen." Making noise, like I was some kind of household pest disrupting her important business. When she walked into the kitchen 30 seconds later, I was leaning against the counter with my arms crossed, studying her face. She'd already rearranged her expression into that practiced smile she wore when she wanted something. "Was that Dom?" I asked, keeping my voice level. She didn't even flinch. "Work stuff. You know how it is." I knew exactly how it was, but instead of calling her out right then, I nodded and handed her the coffee. "Made it just how you like it." "Thanks, babe." She took a sip and made that little satisfied sound she used to make after we made love. Now she was making it for coffee I'd prepared while listening to her plan my humiliation. "You're so good to me." Good to her. Right. The errand boy, doing his job. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, I've been playing the role she assigned me. Loyal, obedient, and completely clueless. Meanwhile, I've been doing some research of my own. Turns out, when you manage restaurants, you develop pretty good investigative skills. You learn to spot theft, track patterns, and document everything. Alicia thinks she's been careful, but she's gotten sloppy, confident. There are text messages, email receipts for hotel rooms, and a paper trail of lies that would make a forensic accountant weep with joy. She's been using our joint credit card to pay for her affair, which is either incredibly stupid or incredibly arrogant. Probably both. The best part? She's been planning this whole thing with Susie's help, Dom's wife. They've been coordinating schedules, creating alibis, and apparently placing bets on how long it'll take me to figure it out. According to a text I found on Alicia's phone while she was in the shower, Susie thinks I'm too nice to cause trouble. Too nice. That's what they're counting on. The assumption that good old Greg will take his beating like a gentleman and shuffle off into the sunset with whatever scraps they decide to throw him. Here's what they don't know about me. I didn't get where I am by being nice. I got here by being smart, patient, and absolutely ruthless when necessary. In the restaurant business, you learn that the best revenge is served publicly, preferably during peak hours when everyone's watching. Tonight is Richard and Nikki's annual Halloween party. Richard's been my friend since high school, and his wife Nikki is one of the few people who's noticed that Alicia's been treating me like hired help lately. The party will be the perfect opportunity to start gathering intelligence and allies. Alicia is going as Cleopatra, which is perfect. Egyptian queens were known for their dramatic downfalls. I'm going as a pirate, because after tonight, I'm done playing by her rules. The Halloween party was exactly what I expected. 30-something suburbanites trying to recapture their college glory days with costumes that cost more than most people's rent. Richard's house was packed with the usual crowd, coworkers, neighbors, and the extended social circle that Alicia had been systematically poisoning against me for months. I watched her work the room in her Cleopatra costume, complete with golden headdress and enough eye makeup to supply a Broadway show. She was in her element, center of attention, holding court by the kitchen island while Dom lurked nearby in a gladiator outfit that showed off his gym-sculpted arms. Subtle as a brick through a window, those two. You look like you're planning someone's downfall. Nikki appeared at my side, dressed as a witch in a way that somehow managed to be both alluring and intimidating. She'd always been the sharpest person in any room, which was probably why she was the first to notice the cracks in my marriage. Just enjoying the show, I said, taking a sip of my beer. Did you know Cleopatra passed away from a snake bite? Historically speaking, that's probably a myth. Nikki followed my gaze to where Alicia was laughing at something Dom had whispered in her ear. But metaphorically speaking, it's got potential? This is why I liked Nikki. She understood subtext. Where's Susie tonight? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Dom's wife had conveniently come down with a stomach bug that morning, according to the group text Alicia Nikki said dryly. Home with a migraine. Third one this month. Poor thing. We watched Dom's hand on Alicia's lower back, a clear sign of their closeness, though most at the party were too drunk or polite to notice. Richard appeared with a beer, concerned. We need to talk. He led me outside to the cold October air. Richard, dressed as a vampire, asked him, Are you okay? Define okay? With Alicia and Dom, he clarified, pointing toward them through the window. Dom's hand slid down to Alicia's hip. It looks like your wife's having an affair at my Halloween party. I sighed, taking a long pull from my beer. Richard had been my friend for years, so I told him the truth. She's been planning to divorce me. She thinks I'll just let her take whatever she wants. Richard was silent for a moment. What are you going to do? I'm going to give her exactly what she asked for. Before he could respond, Alicia stepped onto the deck, flushed from wine and attention. She slipped her arm through mine. I was wondering where my husband had disappeared to. Just getting some air, I said, and turned to Richard. Great party. Richard studied us, then asked, Alicia, where's Dom? He left a few minutes ago. Susie wasn't feeling well, so he wanted to check on her. She lied smoothly. Such a good husband. We went back inside, where the party was in full swing. Alicia returned to her crowd, and I ended up talking to Mike Henderson, a neighbor and paralegal. How's the restaurant business? He asked, distracted by Alicia. Busy. You seem distracted. He lowered his voice. Is everything okay with you and Alicia? Sarah said she seemed more distant lately. Different how? Less interested in couple things. Sarah thinks maybe you're having problems. So Alicia's behavior was obvious to the neighbors. When this blew up, I'd have witnesses to her checking out long before I made a move. We're working through some things, I said, which was true enough. Thanks for asking. The party ended around midnight. Alicia was quiet on the drive home, her expression one I knew meant she was planning something. Fun party, I said as we pulled into our driveway. Mm-hmm. She was scrolling through her phone, probably texting Dom about how the evening had gone. I'm tired. I think I'll go straight to bed. Of course she would. No post-party analysis, no rehashing of funny moments or interesting conversations. Just a quick retreat to her phone and whatever private world she'd been building without me. I waited until I heard her bedroom door close. We'd been sleeping in separate rooms for 3 months, supposedly because of my snoring, before I got to work. The first step was documentation. I'd been collecting evidence for weeks, but tonight had given me something new. Public witnesses to her behavior with Dom. I made notes about who had been at the party, who might have noticed the obvious chemistry between my wife and her lover, and who might be willing to talk if things got messy. The second step was research. Mike Henderson had mentioned that his wife Sarah had noticed changes in Alicia's behavior. That meant other people were paying attention, which could be useful later. The third step was planning. Alicia thought she was going to blindside me with divorce papers, probably sometime in the next few weeks based on what I'd overheard. She was counting on shock, shame, and my supposedly inherent niceness to keep me from fighting back. She was about to learn that she'd seriously underestimated her errand boy. I spent the next hour at my computer, researching divorce law in our state, looking up the best attorneys in town, and creating a timeline of Alicia's affair based on credit card statements, phone records, and social media posts. By the time I went to bed, I had the foundation of a strategy that would give her exactly the kind of public humiliation she'd been planning for me. The only difference was I was going to serve it first. Monday morning arrived with the kind of gray, bitter cold that makes you question every life choice that led to living in the Midwest. Alicia was already gone when I got up. Early morning meeting that I knew was actually breakfast with Dom at the diner on 5th Street. I'd followed them there twice in the past month just to confirm my suspicions. My phone buzzed with a text from Richard. Coffee later? Want to talk about Saturday night? Perfect. I needed allies, and Richard had seen enough at the party to know something was wrong. I texted back that I'd meet him at noon. The morning flew by in a blur of inventory reports and staff scheduling. Running 4 restaurant locations keeps you busy enough that you can almost forget your personal life is imploding. Almost. At 11:30, I was reviewing the weekend sales figures when my phone rang. Alicia's name popped up on the screen, which was unusual. She rarely called during business hours unless it was an emergency. Hey, I answered, keeping my voice neutral. Greg, I need a favor. No greeting, no small talk. Straight to business. Can you pick up my dry cleaning this afternoon? I have a late meeting and won't be able to get there before they close. A late meeting. Right. More likely a late dinner with Dom, followed by whatever they did afterward in the hotel room she'd been charging to our credit card. Sure, I said. Anything else? That's it. Thanks, babe. You're the best. The best. The most reliable. The perfect errand boy. After she hung up, I sat there staring at my phone for a long moment. This was it, the pattern that had defined our marriage for the past 2 years. She made demands disguised as requests. I fulfilled them without question, and she rewarded me with empty praise that made me feel like a well-trained dog. But today was different. Today, I had a plan. I met Richard at Murphy's Coffee Shop, a local place that served decent coffee and minded its own business. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with 2 cups and a concerned expression. You look like hell, he said as I slid into the seat across from him. Thanks. That's exactly what every man wants to hear. I'm serious, Greg. What's going on? And don't tell me everything's fine because I saw how Alicia was acting Saturday night. I took a sip of coffee and studied my oldest friend. Richard had always been the dramatic one, theater kid in high school, still prone to grand gestures and emotional speeches, but he was also loyal, and right now I needed someone in my corner. She's having an affair with Dom Reyes, I said quietly. Has been for months. She's planning to divorce me, and she thinks I'm going to roll over and make it easy for her. Richard's face went through several expressions before settling on anger. That bastard. Yeah, well, turns out I married someone I didn't really know. What are you going to do? I leaned forward, lowering my voice. I'm going to beat her to the punch. File first, publicly, and make sure everyone knows exactly why. Greg? Richard looked uncomfortable. Are you sure that's the right approach? I mean, going public could get messy. It's already messy. She made it messy when she decided to humiliate me behind my back. I pulled out my phone and showed him some of the evidence I'd collected. Text messages, credit card statements, photos from social media that told a pretty clear story. Look at this stuff, Richard. She's been flaunting it. He scrolled through the photos, his expression getting darker with each one. Jesus, how long has this been going on? At least 6 months that I can prove. Probably longer. I took the phone back. The thing is, she's been planning this whole thing with Susie's help. Dom's wife knows about the affair, and she's been covering for them. Susie knows? Richard looked genuinely shocked. But she and Dom have been married for, 10 years? Apparently, she's fine with sharing as long as it's discreet. According to some texts I found, she thinks Dom will get bored and come back to her eventually. That's twisted. That's what I'm dealing with. All 3 of them have been playing games while I've been trying to save my marriage. I finished my coffee and leaned back in the booth. But here's the thing. They've gotten sloppy, overconfident, and they've left a trail that's going to destroy all of them. Richard was quiet for a moment, processing everything I'd told him. What do you need from me? Just be my friend. When this explodes, and it's going to explode, I need people who know the truth. You've got it. He reached across the table and gripped my shoulder. Nikki's going to want to help too. She never liked Alicia anyway. Why not? She always said there was something fake about her, too polished, too careful about her image. Richard smiled grimly. Turns out she was right. After lunch, I drove to Alicia's dry cleaner to pick up her clothes. The owner, Mrs. Chen, was a sweet elderly woman who'd been running the shop for 30 years. She always asked about Alicia, always commented on how lucky I was to have such a beautiful wife. Mr. Taylor, she called out when I walked in. Here for Mrs. Taylor's things? That's right. She disappeared into the back and returned with an armload of Alicia's work clothes. Expensive suits, silk blouses, the kind of power wardrobe that projected success and authority. "She's working so much lately," Mrs. Chen said as she rang up the order. "Always picking up extra clothes, always in a hurry." "Extra clothes?" "Oh yes, she was here Friday with a gentleman friend, needed rush service on a cocktail dress." Mrs. Chen smiled innocently. "Such a nice man, very polite. He waited in the car while she came in." Dom. Alicia had been here with Dom on Friday, getting a dress cleaned for some event I knew nothing about. Another piece of evidence for the growing pile. "Did she say what the dress was for?" I asked casually. "Company party, I think. She looked very excited." A company party that I hadn't been invited to. Or more likely, a romantic dinner that she'd lied about. I paid for the dry cleaning and drove home, my mind racing. Every interaction, every casual conversation was revealing new details about how extensively my wife had been deceiving me. It wasn't just the affair, it was the complete alternate life she'd been living. The house was empty when I got there, which gave me time to do some more investigation. Alicia's laptop was password protected, but I knew her well enough to guess her passwords. She'd always been predictable that way. Her email was a goldmine. Months of correspondence with Dom, with Susie, and with several of her coworkers who were apparently aware of the situation and actively encouraging it. There were restaurant reservations, hotel bookings, and even discussions about what she was going to do with Greg's stuff after the divorce. The most damning email was from 3 weeks ago, sent to her sister in California. "The divorce should be final by Christmas. Greg won't fight it. He's too nice and embarrassed. Dom thinks we should wait a few months, but I'm tired of sneaking around. I want to bring him to company events without questions. Too nice. Too embarrassed." The assumption was always that I'd quietly accept whatever she decided. I printed everything, organized it, and locked it in the filing cabinet. Then I called the best divorce lawyer in town for an appointment on Thursday. Alicia came home around 8, looking happy in the way that meant she'd spent the afternoon with Dom. "Thanks for getting my dry cleaning," she said, barely glancing at me. "I'm going to bed early. Long day tomorrow." "No problem," I replied. She paused at the top of the stairs, looked down at me, and said, "We should talk soon. About things?" The opening move in her game. "Sure," I said. "Whenever you're ready." She nodded and disappeared. A few minutes later, I heard the bath running. I had an hour before she emerged. In that hour, I made copies, uploaded files to a secure cloud, and sent a carefully worded email to my attorney. By the time Alicia finished her bath, I had enough evidence to ruin her professionally and personally. The errand boy was about to become something far more dangerous. Thursday morning arrived sunny and warm. I'd taken the day off work, citing a family emergency. Technically true. My appointment with Jennifer Walsh, a top divorce attorney, was at 10. Her office was in a Victorian house downtown. Jennifer was sharp and unimpressed by sob stories. "You have evidence of adultery?" she asked. I laid everything out. Emails, credit card statements, photos, texts, and a detailed timeline. "This is thorough," she said. "How long have you been collecting this?" "About a month. The affair's been going on for at least 6 months." "And you're sure you want to proceed? Once we file, it's public record." I thought about Alicia's voice, calling me a wounded puppy. "I'm certain." She smiled, not kindly. "We can file on grounds of adultery and request full asset disclosure. We can also seek damages." "What about timing?" "We can file tomorrow, serve her by Monday. Where should she be served?" "Her office," I said. "During business hours." Jennifer smiled wider. "I like your style." We spent the next hour finalizing details. By the time I left, I felt lighter. For the first time in months, I was taking action instead of reacting. My phone buzzed. "Richard told me everything. Coffee this afternoon? I have info you might find useful." I agreed to meet Nikki at 3. At Murphy's, Nikki had ordered for both of us. "You look better," she said. "Less like a man attending his own funeral." "I filed for divorce this morning." "Good. Richard told me about the affair, but there's more. Alicia and Dom aren't as discreet as they think. My friend Janet works at the Marriott. She's seen them there 6 times in the past 2 months. Dom checks in. Alicia shows up an hour later. Useful for the divorce. There's more. Sarah Henderson, Mike's wife, saw them at lunch last week. She took pictures. Nikki showed me the photos. Alicia and Dom at a corner table, holding hands, looking like teenagers in love. Sarah's been documenting this for weeks. She was planning to talk to you about it, but wasn't sure how. Why the pictures? Because she likes you and thinks Alicia's behavior is disgusting. Sarah's been married to Mike for 15 years and knows what betrayal looks like. Plus, she never liked Alicia. None of the neighborhood wives did. Why not? Because she's always acted like she was better than everyone else. Too good for block parties, too busy for neighborhood events, always making comments about other people's houses or cars or jobs. Nikki shrugged. We tolerated her because we like you, but nobody's going to be sorry to see her go. The afternoon flew by as Nikki filled me in on months of gossip I'd been oblivious to. Apparently, Alicia's affair had been an open secret among the neighborhood wives for weeks. They'd been protecting me, trying to figure out how to tell me, while I'd been stumbling around in the dark. There's something else, Nikki said as we were getting ready to leave. Susie Reyes has been talking. She's been telling people that she and Dom are getting divorced, but she's also been spreading rumors about you. What kind of rumors? That you're controlling, that you monitor Alicia's every move, that she's afraid to leave you because you might get violent. Nikki's expression was grim. She's trying to set up a narrative where Alicia is the victim. That's completely false. I know that. Everyone who actually knows you knows that. But Susie's been very convincing, and she's been talking to people who don't know you well. This was worse than I'd thought. Not only was I dealing with an affair, but there was an active campaign to destroy my reputation and paint me as the villain. What should I do? Fight back, publicly. Don't let them control the narrative. Nikki gathered her purse and stood up. You've got the truth on your side, Greg. Use it. I drove home with my mind racing. The situation was more complicated than I'd realized, but it was also more clear-cut. This wasn't just about an affair anymore. It was about a coordinated effort to destroy me while protecting themselves. Alicia was home when I got there, sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop and a glass of wine. She looked up when I walked in, and I could see the calculation in her eyes. We need to talk, she said. Here it was. The conversation she'd been planning, probably with Dom's coaching and Susie's encouragement. Okay, I said, taking a seat across from her. What's on your mind? She closed the laptop and folded her hands on the table. I think we both know this isn't working anymore. This being our marriage? Yes. She had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. We've grown apart, Greg. We want different things. I think it would be better for both of us if we made it official. You want a divorce. I think it's the right thing to do. She reached across the table like she was going to take my hand, then seemed to think better of it. We can keep this amicable. No lawyers, no drama, just a clean break. No lawyers, no drama, just me signing whatever papers she put in front of me, like the good little errand boy she thought I was. What about the house? I asked. I'd like to keep it, if that's okay. You could take the car, some of the furniture, whatever you need to get started somewhere else. She'd already decided how to divide our life, probably with Dom's input. I wondered if they'd walked through the house together, deciding what he'd like to keep and what they could afford to give me. And if I don't agree to those terms? For just a moment, her mask slipped. I saw something cold and calculating in her eyes, something that reminded me that she worked in HR and knew exactly how to destroy people professionally. I hope it doesn't come to that, she said carefully. But if you want to make this difficult, I have options. There it was. The threat that Nikki had warned me about. The implication that she could make me look like the bad guy if I didn't cooperate. I see. I stood up and walked to the kitchen counter, keeping my back to her. Can I think about it? Of course. Take all the time you need. I could hear the relief in her voice. She thought she'd won. I know this is a lot to process. I turned around and smiled at her. You're right. It is a lot to process. But I appreciate you being so direct about what you want. She smiled back, and for a moment she looked like the woman I'd married 12 years ago, before the ambition and the image management and the casual cruelty. I just want us both to be happy, Greg. I know, I said. Me too. After she went upstairs, I sat in the kitchen and finished her wine. Tomorrow she'd be served with divorce papers at her office. By Monday, everyone in her company would know that her marriage was over and why. The errand boy was about to deliver his last job. Friday afternoon at 2:47 p.m., my phone rang. Alicia's name flashed on the screen, but this wasn't the usual casual call about errands or dinner plans. This was the sound of a woman whose world had just exploded. What the hell did you do? Her voice was shaking with rage and something else. Panic. I'm sorry, what are you talking about? Don't play dumb with me, Greg. The papers. The goddamn divorce papers that were served to me in front of my entire department. I'd been expecting this call, but hearing the raw fury in her voice was more satisfying than I'd anticipated. Oh, those. I thought about what you said last night, about making things official. You son of a bastard. Do you have any idea what you've done? Actually, I had a very clear idea. Jennifer Walsh had called me an hour ago to report that the papers had been delivered exactly as planned. The process server had walked into Alicia's office during a departmental meeting, asked for her by name, and handed her the divorce petition in front of 6 coworkers and her direct supervisor. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for, I said calmly. A divorce. I thought you'd be happy. Not like this. Not in public, not with... She was struggling to get the words out. Greg, there are things in these papers. Private things. Financial records. You mean the credit card statements showing hotel charges? The ones where you used our joint account to pay for your affair? How long have you known? She asked finally. Long enough. Long enough to document everything, Alicia. The hotels, the restaurants, the text messages, the emails. All of it. You went through my private communications? The indignation in her voice was almost funny. Your private communications that you conducted on devices and accounts that I pay for? Yeah, I did. Turns out you're not as careful as you thought you were. This is harassment. It's stalking. I can have you arrested. With what evidence? Everything I collected was legally obtained from accounts and devices that belong to both of us. But please, call the police. I'd love to explain to them why you're so upset about your husband discovering your affair. Another long silence. I could practically hear her mind racing, trying to figure out how to regain control of the situation. Greg, we can work this out. We don't have to do this in public. Actually, we do. See, I found out about the rumors you and Susie have been spreading, about me being controlling, potentially violent. Very clever, trying to set up a narrative where you're the victim. That's not... I never said you were violent. No, but you let Susie say it. You let her plant seeds, create doubt. Make people think I was the kind of husband a woman might need to escape from. I was pacing around my office now, adrenaline coursing through my system. The problem is, too many people know the truth about who I really am, and now they know the truth about who you really are too. What do you want? I want exactly what's in those papers. Fair division of assets, accounting for the money you stole to fund your affair, and a clean break. No alimony, no claims on my retirement, no ongoing financial entanglement. And if I fight it, then this gets a lot more public. Right now, only your coworkers know. But if you contest this divorce, if you try to claim I was abusive or controlling, then I release everything. Every email, every text, every photo, every receipt. I'll make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of person you are. The silence stretched out so long, I thought she might have hung up. I need time to think, she said finally. You have until Monday. That's when my attorney files the additional paperwork. Additional paperwork? Financial disclosure requirements. Since you used marital assets for personal expenses, we need a full accounting of where the money went. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, gifts you bought for Dom. All of it becomes part of the public record. She hung up without another word. I sat back in my chair and allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. For months, Alicia had been planning my humiliation, counting on my niceness and passivity to make her life easier. She'd gotten comfortable with the idea that she could manipulate me, use me, and discard me without consequences. She was learning otherwise. My phone buzzed with a text from Richard. Heard through the grapevine that Alicia had an interesting day at work. You okay? I texted back, better than okay. Want to grab dinner tonight? Absolutely. Nikki wants to come too. She's been fielding calls all afternoon. That was interesting. I called Nikki directly. Greg, she answered on the first ring. I've been waiting for you to call. You have stirred up quite the hornet's nest. Good or bad? Depends on your perspective. Sarah Henderson called me 20 minutes ago. Apparently Susie Reyes has been making the rounds, calling everyone she can think of to do damage control. What's she saying? That you're having some kind of breakdown? That you've been stalking Alicia and Dom? That you're dangerous? That everyone needs to be careful around you? Nikki paused. The problem is, nobody's buying it. Why not? Because half the neighborhood has seen Alicia and Dom together, and the other half has watched you bend over backward to be a good husband for years. Susie's story doesn't match what people have observed with their own eyes. This was better than I'd hoped. What else? Janet from the hotel called me. Apparently Dom tried to check in there this afternoon, probably planning to meet Alicia after her terrible day, but the staff recognized him from all the previous visits and asked if he wanted the usual room. He panicked and left. I couldn't help but laugh. They're falling apart. It gets better. Mike Henderson saw Dom at the gas station around 4 o'clock. Said he looked like he'd been hit by a truck. Apparently he's been trying to call Alicia all afternoon, but she's not answering. The affair that had seemed so romantic and exciting when it was secret was becoming a liability now that it was exposed. Neither of them had planned for what would happen when their perfect little bubble burst. "There's one more thing," Nicky said. "Susie called me directly about an hour ago." "What did she want?" "To convince me that you're dangerous and that I should stay away from you. She said you've been obsessing over Alicia and Dom, and that she's worried about what you might do next." "What did you tell her?" "I told her that I've known you for 5 years, that you're one of the most decent men I've ever met, and that if she's worried about anyone's behavior, she should look at her own husband." Nicky's voice was sharp with anger. Then I told her that if she calls me again with lies about my friends, I'll make sure everyone in town knows that she's been covering for her husband's affair." "How did she react?" "She hung up on me. But here's the thing, Greg. She's scared. They're all scared. This isn't going the way they planned." We talked for a few more minutes before I hung up and got ready to meet Richard and Nicky for dinner. As I was getting dressed, my phone rang again. This time it was Dom. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Greg," his voice was tight, controlled. "We need to talk. Do we? This thing with Alicia, it's gotten out of hand. People are talking, making assumptions." "What kind of assumptions?" "You know what kind." He was trying to sound reasonable, like we were two adults who could work this out between ourselves. "Look, I know you're angry, but destroying Alicia's reputation isn't going to fix your marriage." "My marriage was destroyed the moment you put your hands on my wife. I'm just making sure everyone knows it." "Come on, man. These things happen. People grow apart. They make mistakes. It doesn't have to be World War III. The casual dismissal of what he'd done, the assumption that I should just accept it as one of those things that happen, made my vision go red for a moment. "Let me explain something to you, Dom. You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. Every hotel room, every lunch date, every time you touched my wife, you chose to betray your marriage and destroy mine. And now you're going to live with the consequences." "And what about Susie? She doesn't deserve to be humiliated because of this." "Susie knew about the affair. She helped cover for you. She's been spreading lies about me to protect both of you. She made her choices too." "Greg, please. Can't we work something out? Some way to handle this quietly?" "You had months to handle this quietly. You could have ended the affair. You could have gotten counseling. You could have done a dozen different things. Instead, you decided to plan my humiliation with my own wife." I was walking through my house now, looking at 12 years of marriage that had been reduced to a property settlement. "Now it's my turn. You're making a mistake. Push too hard, and people are going to start thinking you're the problem. Let them think whatever they want. I have evidence, Dom. Documentation. Witnesses. The truth is on my side." I stopped in front of the wedding photo that still hung in our hallway. Alicia and me, young and happy and stupidly optimistic. "You have lies and excuses, and a reputation that's about to be destroyed." He hung up without another word. I stood there for a moment, looking at that wedding photo, and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not happiness, not satisfaction, but a deep, calm certainty that I was doing the right thing. The errand boy was finally done taking orders. Dinner with Richard and Nicky was exactly what I needed. Good food, loyal friends, and the satisfaction of knowing that the people who actually mattered were on my side. We spent 2 hours dissecting the day's events, planning strategy for the weeks ahead, and laughing at the increasingly desperate attempts by Alicia, Dom, and Susie to control the narrative. "You know what the best part is?" Nicky said as we were finishing dessert. "They thought they were so smart, so careful, but they underestimated everyone. You, the neighbors, even their own ability to keep their story straight." "Pride goeth before a fall," Richard added. "They got cocky." "They got comfortable," I corrected. "They thought I was weak, that I'd never fight back. They built their whole plan around the assumption that I'd roll over and take whatever they decided to give me. And now?" I smiled and raised my beer in a mock toast. "Now they're about to find out what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness." We parted ways around 9 o'clock. I drove home through the quiet suburban streets, past houses where families were settling in for the night, past the lives I'd thought I wanted, but apparently was never going to have. The house was dark when I got there. Alicia's car wasn't in the driveway, which meant she was probably at Dom's place, or at Susie's, or somewhere else trying to figure out how to salvage the situation. I didn't care where she was. For the first time in months, I slept through the night without waking up. No anxiety, no racing thoughts, no wondering what fresh betrayal I'd discover in the morning. Just deep, peaceful sleep. Saturday morning brought the consequences of Friday's actions. My phone had 17 missed calls and 43 text messages, most from numbers I didn't recognize. Word was spreading faster than I'd expected. The first call I returned was to Jennifer Walsh. "Well," she said without preamble, "you've certainly made an impression. I've had 3 calls this morning, one from your wife's attorney, one from a reporter, and one from someone claiming to represent Mr. Reyes." "A reporter?" "Local paper. Apparently someone tipped them off about the public nature of the filing. They want to know if you are willing to comment." "What did you tell them?" "That my client has no comment at this time, but that all relevant information is part of the public record." She paused. "Are you prepared for this to get bigger?" I thought about Alicia's voice on the phone yesterday, shaking with rage and panic, about Dom's desperate attempt to negotiate some kind of deal, about Susie's increasingly frantic calls to anyone who would listen. "Let it get bigger," I said. "I'm done hiding." The rest of Saturday was a blur of phone calls, text messages, and visits from neighbors who wanted to express their support. Sarah Henderson stopped by with a casserole and an offer to testify if needed. Mike brought beer and legal advice. Even people I barely knew were reaching out to let me know they were on my side. By Sunday evening, the story had taken on a life of its own. The local paper ran a small item about the divorce filing, focusing on the unusual circumstances and the public nature of the service. Social media was buzzing with gossip and speculation. Alicia's company was reportedly conducting an internal investigation into whether company resources had been used to facilitate the affair. Dom had been suspended from his job pending a review of his conduct. Susie had deactivated all her social media accounts. And Alicia? Alicia had disappeared. Monday morning brought the final chapter. Jennifer called at 8 a.m. to inform me that Alicia's attorney had contacted her over the weekend to discuss settlement terms. "She wants to negotiate," Jennifer said. "No contest, no claims of abuse, no request for alimony. She'll accept the asset division we proposed in exchange for privacy." "What kind of privacy?" "No additional public disclosure of evidence, no statements to the media, a standard confidentiality clause that prevents both parties from discussing the details of the marriage or divorce." I considered this. On one hand, I'd accomplished what I set out to do, public acknowledgement of what she'd done, fair division of assets, and a clean break. On the other hand, letting her off easy now might send the wrong message. "Counter offer," I said. "I'll agree to the confidentiality clause, but only after she makes a public apology. Not to me, I don't need her apology. But to the people she lied about me to. She needs to publicly retract the claims about me being controlling or potentially violent. That's unusual. So was serving divorce papers during a departmental meeting. Sometimes unusual situations call for unusual solutions." Jennifer was quiet for a moment. "I'll make the call." The answer came back within an hour. Alicia would agree to my terms. The public apology was posted on her Facebook page that afternoon, a brief, carefully worded statement acknowledging that she had made errors in judgment during her marriage and that any negative statements she or her friends had made about my character were unfounded and unfair. She asked for privacy during this difficult time and announced that she would be taking a leave of absence from her job. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. I kept the house, most of the assets, and my reputation. Alicia moved to another state to live with her sister. Dom and Susie's marriage imploded spectacularly. She filed for divorce and took him for everything he had. The neighborhood settled back into its normal rhythm, though I noticed that people treated me differently now, not with pity or sympathy, but with a kind of respect I hadn't experienced before. I'd stood up for myself, fought back against people who tried to destroy me, and won. 6 months later, I was having coffee with Richard and Nikki when the subject of my ex-wife came up. "Any regrets?" Nikki asked. I thought about it seriously, about the marriage that had failed, the trust that had been broken, the public spectacle that had consumed weeks of my life. "No," I said finally. "I gave her 12 years of loyalty and devotion. She repaid that with betrayal and planned humiliation. I gave her exactly what she gave me, just more efficiently." "The errand boy's revenge," Richard said with a grin. "The errand boy's last job," I corrected. And it was. I was done being anyone's errand boy, done accepting less than I deserved, done letting people mistake my kindness for weakness. These days, I'm just Greg Taylor, district manager, homeowner, and a man who learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be a victim.